BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Danny Robbins, and this is a special case update episode. So, this is a chance for us to go into some aspects of the investigation in a little bit more detail and answer a few of your questions. Firstly, thanks for all the emails so far. So many brilliant questions and theories coming in. Dan from Austin, Texas asks, why didn't the Hitchings move out of 63 Wycliffe Road after the furniture started moving about and Shirley levitated above her bed? That's a great question, and I think the answer is really, would you want to be forced out of your home? It's interesting how often in poltergeist cases the family do stay there, determined to stick it out. It becomes like a standoff. He also asks, did Harold Chibbett use any audio or visual recording equipment? Unfortunately not. This is 1956. And those kind of things just weren't easily or cheaply available back then. Later in the case, Chib does get hold of a camera, and you can see some of the photographs that he took on the BBC website. Now, quite a few of you are asking about the key that Shirley found in episode 1. We heard Chib questioning the family.
So, where do you want to start?
The best place, I find, is always the beginning. I've read the newspaper accounts, but they're very sensational. I'd like to hear in your own words when you first noticed something odd.
The key.
Shirley found it.
End of January.
27th.
It was on my bed, sitting on the pillow. I'd never seen it before.
As this is such a significant moment, I thought it'd be interesting for you to hear a bit more about this discovery from Shirley herself.
It was an ordinary day, and I got up in the morning and went out to the kitchen to get my breakfast, went back to make my bed, and on the pillow was this elaborate key. And it was ornate. It had sort of curly bits on it, and it looked old. It was silver, and what I can remember, it was about 4 inches long, and I'd never seen it before. So I picked it up, took it out to my father, who was doing things in the kitchen. I said, put it on the kitchen table. I said, look, Dad, I found this on the bed. Where's it come from?
So is the key's appearance just a coincidence, or could there really be a link between it and what happens later? Some people have even been asking if this is a gift from Donald, which is a really creepy thought. I've got our experts here, Evelyn Hollow and Kieran O'Keefe. Now, ideally, we'd be debating this in front of a roaring fire in a nice pub, but instead we're on Zoom. Kieran and Evelyn, what do you both make of the key?
I think it's fascinating. The feature of apports, which is this kind of random appearance of objects, that feature in poltergeist cases is not unusual.
The key is really an odd one for me. In some of these cases, there is a single strange event that triggers it, but it's often just with noises. It is a bit strange to have a single object. And as they describe the key is very fancy. It doesn't belong in the house and it doesn't fit anything. And even to have acquired that key, it's not something that somebody, would drop in the street. It's quite an ornamental thing. It obviously is paired with something quite decorative. So for an object that is that ornate to turn up and you don't know where it came from, that is really strange. And really right from that moment is when the events start happening. It's trying to work out the significance of that key is a real mystery.
I wonder if the most unsettling feature of it is because they don't know where it's from. There is an instant human reaction that somebody has invaded our home in much the same way that you think about burglary. So the significance of a key that is from out of nowhere, that doesn't fit any locks, doesn't fit any doors, I mean, that is significant in itself because of this feature of somebody must have invaded our home to put that key there. And that alone becomes then a feature of the poltergeist case as it progresses. The fact that it's almost as though you've got somebody invading the home, invading the family.
And in one of the most private places, on Shelley's pillow.
Yes.
That's a fascinating thought. Whatever we feel about the key, we know that night that the family start to hear the noises. You heard me in Ep 1 trying to reproduce them. Okay, we seem to be hitting 85 decibels. We're going a bit higher, 87 decibels. Okay, so... Oh, God. Have we genuinely blown our speakers? We were hitting such a huge level of decibels, we might have blown out our speakers. Not exactly laboratory conditions, but it proved that it must have been intensely loud, Evelyn. And it's happening night after night for weeks. It's like a form of torture.
It is. It's like sleep deprivation, torture. We really can't understate the effect that that must have on the family. It really escalates to a point of it being shockingly loud. Neighbours can also hear it, so it's not just affecting the family, it's affecting the people immediately around them as well. So that must create a social climate for them as well, because imagine, throwing a party and your neighbours are annoyed. And so, there's sort of shame and guilt, maybe a disagreement. And you have no control over this noise. They have no idea what's going on, so they're frightened. And then they've got the neighbours and other people in the street, asking what the hell is going on.
Are you crazy, Mr. H? Hammering on the walls at 3 a.m.
It's nothing to do with me. Oh, God, you see? It just started up with no idea why.
It's just incredible. That is such a high volume of noise that there's no way for that not to be frightening. It's also the positioning of the noise as well. It's not just on a window or a door. It's in the ceiling sometimes. It's in the headboards. It seems to be personal.
Kieran, give me the hardcore skeptic take on these noises.
The difficulty for any skeptical explanation for something like this is that you've got a variety of different noises and a variety of different context. So I would start to break it down into the localized noises or tapping sounds that we're hearing within the house. We cannot discount the possibility that somebody is actually doing it themselves, whether it's unconscious or consciously, so conscious fraud or unconsciously they're doing it, but we cannot discount that. When you start to get to the bigger noises, the noises that the locals hear, the neighbours hear, why couldn't it be something environmental? So, for example, when you look at a map and see where Wycliffe Road is, just down the road is Clapham Junction, Britain's busiest railway station. There's underground lines around that area as well. You're not far from the River Thames and kind of busy docks and that sort of thing.
Okay, this is interesting because we've got an email here from Jackie Gilmartin who asks if there were train lines near the property. She says, going from memories of my childhood, my aunt and uncle lived near a railway line, and every time a train went by, the house shook, ornaments moved. And there is indeed a railway bridge at the bottom of Wycliffe Road. Have a listen to this clip from when my producer Simon and I were recording there. Can you hear the train?
Yes.
It's very close. The train is just at the bottom of the road. That'll be going into Clapham Junction, which is apparently Europe's busiest railway station. Or maybe Britain's busiest railway station. A lot of Europe disagrees, I think. But it's interesting, the train's really, really close. And one thing I have wondered is if the trains played any impact at all in the noises in the house. Because in my house, where I live up in northeast London, and one day we just noticed we could hear the tube, and we'd never heard it before. And it was because they'd started doing some work on the line. They'd somehow changed the way the tube ran under us. And now, every day we hear... And I just wondered if around that time, in 56, if there'd been any difference with the trains, if they'd done any work.
There's a huge amount of environmental stuff that could be causing the noise, and why couldn't that be a possible explanation? That there could be some building work or some sort of work that's going on underground or at a railway or somewhere nearby that's causing this sound, but then people quickly fixate on it happening at 63 Wycliffe Road, and it takes on a whole other element.
That takes us on to a brilliant email from Emily Whittaker, who says, I'm an environmental health practitioner, and part of my training is around housing conditions as well as noise nuisance. I'd like to know if the house had a basement. If not, is there a sewer network running underneath? Could it be that engineering works were being carried out underground under the house? The neighbours say the banging sounded like ripping up the floors, which could indicate a sense that it was the floor level creating noise or vibration. Noise disturbance is well accepted to be perceived as worse at night when other daytime incidental noises are gone. So, firstly, no, there wasn't a basement, but Evelyn, you've been researching the geography of Wycliffe Road. What do you make of Kieran and Emily's theories about underground noise?
I've looked through old London Underground maps starting in about the 30s all the way to the 70s, and there's no abandoned stations underneath Wycliffe Road or anything like that. Also, Wally, the father, has been driving trains both overground and underground pretty much his entire life. So if it was noises due to that, he would notice. In terms of proximity, the closest station would be Clapham Common. That's 1.4 miles away. How loud would something have to be happening 1.4 miles away for them to be able to hear it in the house and the neighbours? But then also, it would be louder for the houses closer to Clapham Common. And same with Clapham Junction, which is 1.1 miles away. And I do certainly imagine that you'd be able to hear trains rumbling past. But if it was shaking the house or creating that noise from the tracks, any vibrations or sounds would be perfectly common to neighbours and others, so they would recognise it. And also, the people who live closer to the tracks, it would be much worse for them.
Yeah, and on that note, literally whilst we've been talking, I've just got an email here from Shirley's husband, Derek, who sent me over a map that he's marked up with the original position of the house before it was demolished. And this is a bit of a bombshell, but it seems that not only did number 63 disappear, but so did a huge chunk of the street. Wycliffe Road actually used to be much, much longer than it is now. And just looking at this, number 63 was, unfortunately, the end furthest away from the train bridge. So right down by Lavender Hill, where Ashley Crescent is now. So that is possibly one theory that bites the dust. Sorry, Kieran.
And in terms of electricity works, yeah, Battersea Power Station, which is a huge electrical station, is in the area, but it's 1.9 miles away. It's almost 2 miles away. And if we're talking about telephone lines and things, why would it specifically affect 63 and the waterways as well? There are no lost rivers running under the property. The closest thing would be the Falcon or the Effra. They're both approximately 2 miles away. And even before the property was erected, it was a rural area.
It's interesting, we've had a few emails asking about the history of the house and the area. If this was a horror movie, we'd conveniently discover that number 63 was built on the site of a plague pit or a medieval monastery with an evil demonic abbot. You haven't turned up anything like that, Evelyn?
It's very difficult to just, Google, native burial ground 63 Wycliffe Road. But, although I don't doubt that, historically things did take place in the area, specifically on that street on Wycliffe Road. It was just a rural area. It was fields. It was essentially a marsh. And then in the 1800s, there was an acetic acid works built on it. And then they only started building houses and things once the sort of railway station was there because it became a populous area. But there's no immediate, this wasn't this, the site of a place of a massive slaughter specifically on Wycliffe Road. There's nothing like that.
So some big differences of opinion there on what could have caused the sounds. But we do all agree that if the neighbours can hear them, then this part of the case is entirely fact-checkably real. The family aren't making these noises up.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't deny that the family are not making this up. I think they are genuinely experiencing it and the neighbours are genuinely experiencing it. What I'm trying to differentiate from is the noises that you have extra witnesses who are outside of the house hearing, and then those noises that are within the house and could be caused by some other reason. But yeah, this is what makes the case stand out as well, is that you've got the neighbours actually knocking on the door going, can you please keep the noise down? So you've got these extra witnesses, which is brilliant.
Okay, thanks both. So that is all for this case update. Hopefully it was helpful to hear a bit more of our research. Let me know if any of this sparks your own debates. Get on Zoom or whatever and chuck a few theories around with anyone you know who's listening. Try and create a virtual version of your favourite haunted pub or artisan coffee shop or wherever you like to go to chat about ghosts. Huge thanks to everyone who's emailed. Sorry if we didn't tackle your question. The story will continue in episode 4 and it's about to get pretty intense. Until then, keep the questions and theories coming in, both paranormal and skeptic. The address is Battersea Poltergeist at bbc.co.uk, and you can also find me, Danny Robbins, on social media. We'll be doing another of these quite soon, and hopefully we might even be able to put some of your questions to Shirley herself at some point. Please spread the word about the show. We'll be back soon. Until then, sleep well. Try not to have any nightmares.
Ah!